Welcome to Rosie the Reviewer. We're your hosts. I'm Sam,
And I'm Marcia.
and we like World War II media, and we want to talk about it.
Welcome back, everybody, to Rosie the Reviewer. This week we are discussing the movie U-571, which came out in the year 2000. I don't think we've done a movie from that year before. Directed by Jonathan Mustow from a screenplay that he co-wrote with Sam Montgomery and David Ayer, which we know from Fury. If you want to go listen to that episode we did about Fury, it's fun. This film follows a World War II German U-boat boarded by American submariners to capture her Enigma cipher machine. The plot is entirely fictional, but if you want to learn more about the Enigma machine, you can check out our episode about the Imitation Game. The movie kinda sucks, but our notes are fun, so go listen to that. This movie won an Academy Award, believe it or not, for Best Sound Editing, and it's available to watch on a variety of platforms. For me, it's on Prime. I think it's on Netflix in the US, so have at it. And today we are joined once again by our wonderful friend Katie, who has been previously with us for an episode about walking with the enemy, so you can listen to that too. And welcome back, Katie. Thank you for being on.
Thanks for having me back, guys.
So, shall we just start with some general impressions of this movie? What did you think about it, Sam?
Well, I'm glad you said that the plot is fictional because it's very super loosely based on a true story, but in a way that kind of just pissed everyone off. It's got some fun action-y parts, but I think overall it struggles to maintain tension, and a lot of the parts should be more tense than they are. And I think that just generally speaking, I don't know, like it really just feels like an action movie that came out in the year 2000. Like it really strongly has that vibe for me. I don't think the script is anything to write home about. I don't think the dialogue is incredible or the character development is incredible. But yeah, I mean, we haven't watched the Submarine movie yet, so that was kind of fun. And I don't think there are any women with lines in this movie, so that's a distinction as well. What did you think, Katie?
As far as an action movie goes, I think it was fantastic. I think a couple more explosions and it would be mistaken for a Jerry Bruckheimer movie. That's how just action-y, action. Very much a product of its time, the early 2000s. Good popcorn movie, but other than that, that's about it. Like you said, nothing really to write home about.
Well, for me, I kind of had forgotten for a second that I'm claustrophobic and afraid of the ocean. So this was really fun. And by fun, I mean I wanted it to be over almost immediately, but it took quite a long time. Which is another thing, I think the movie definitely struggles with pace, where certain scenes are very long and other scenes are very short. So I'm like, maybe this could have been done a little bit differently. I think as a thriller, it's quite good. Like, it's quite tense in places, and it did make me understand that being on a submarine is fucking scary because everybody looks super scared all the time. There's some questionable German in this movie about a German U-boat, and there's some fun characters in there for sure that I liked and that I wanted to root for, but at the same time, it's just not my kind of movie. So, not exactly a waste of time, but I would have liked for it to have been a little bit shorter. Maybe 90 minutes would have been fine with me.
I think possibly too, they threw in one or two too many wildly improbable things. It's like almost the vibe of like when you watch a new Fast and the Furious movie and they like go to space or whatever, and you're like, no, right. Well, there's only so long I can suspend my disbelief, and this is ostensibly a history movie. And so like a number of things happen in this movie where you're like, I don't think that would happen. I don't think that would happen.
Yeah, and it feels like it does this weird thing where it's going and then all of a sudden it ends. And even though it is kind of long, it also feels like there should be another act to sort of resolve things a little bit better. I don't know if you guys had that feeling as well, but it's just, we're off the boat and then the credits are rolling.
Yeah, that's it. There's really no wrap up for like the characters. They're like, oh, the plot is done. You don't need to know about the tie up of what's happening to any of these people.
For me, it was kind of the opposite. I was like, wait, didn't they just get away? Can they just now be done getting away from people? But no, they just never get away until the very end. Spoilers. Anyway, I think this is a good moment to get into the plot.
I had to sail the high seas to get access to this movie, and the first version that I downloaded, I opened it. These opening cards were not on there. And then when the German started, there was no subtitles, and there was no English subtitles until everyone started speaking English, which was not particularly useful to me. So I had to download another version that actually had like the stuff like hard coded into it. Anyway, it was a whole thing. So we get an opening card. It's the spring of 1942. Hitler's U-boats wreak havoc in the North Atlantic, sinking over 1,000 Allied ships and threatening to destroy the supply line from America to England. Unable to crack the new U-boat radio codes, the Allies struggle blindly against the German onslaught.
I mean, I guess.
I'm going to do the ugly American thing and just point out that nobody has said this is based on a true story. Nobody is saying that yet. And that's really important for later on, I feel like. Just saying.
This is one of those opening cards where I'm like, couldn't you have done a little show and tell instead of just putting this on an opening card?
Can we have a map, maybe? Like just something, helpful.
Yeah, perhaps, yes. Some context.
But to be fair, it's a movie sort of based on history, so I guess it needs an opening card because they all have one. Anyway, when the movie opens for real, we open on a German submarine, which is the title Submarine, destroying a British vessel. I think it's British, only then to be incapacitated themselves by depth charges from a British destroyer. And all of the engineers and machinists are killed in a flash fire, and their commander, his name is Gunther Wassner, and he's played by Thomas Kretschmann. He manages to transmit a distress call because they're basically stuck out in the ocean. I have to say, I do like this opening scene because it's very tense. Like, it puts you right in there and you immediately know it's going to be one of those movies. The only thing that was confusing to me, had I not known this was going to be about an American submariner crew, was, wait, are we rooting for these people? Are they evil? But obviously they're German, so I guess we're not rooting for them. But it's not necessarily... You don't immediately know who you're supposed to root for because this scene is very long. It's like a good 10 minutes long, I think.
Yeah, then we kind of switch over to meet our Americans, and they're at this big wedding. They're all on a 48-hour pass, so they're in their nice fancy white uniforms, and everyone's dancing and having a good time. So it's Lieutenant Andy Tyler, played by Matthew McConaughey, Lieutenant Pete Emmett, played by John Bon Jovi, whom I simply did not recognize because he looks 12, Lieutenant Commander Mike Dahlgren, played by Bill Paxton, who I did recognize, and I was very excited to see him. Chief Gunner's Mate Henry Kyo, played by Harvey Keitel, and Ensign Keith Larson, who's played by Matthew Settle, friend of the pod, Band of Brothers fame, who's getting married, and all these Marines are celebrating at his wedding. And Matthew McConaughey's character is feeling a little bit let down because he thought he was going to get command of his own submarine, but unfortunately that didn't happen for him.
So I do like this wedding thing. You get introduced to almost everybody all at once, so it's like you're not going to immediately know who it's going to be from that scene, but they do a good job, I think. But like you said, Tyler's pretty upset that he doesn't get his own U-boat to command, but Commander Dahlgren thinks he's not yet ready, which is kind of a theme in this movie. But he does get to go on a mission because the U-boat he's been surfing on, the S-33, will disguise itself as a German resupply vessel because they have to intercept the U-571 because it has an Enigma machine and they need to get it. So when he is briefed, we learn that another of his crew, Seaman Bill Wendt, played by Jack Noseworthy, who's a radio man, is half German. And this kind of becomes a little thing in this movie. And there's another man called Lieutenant Michael Hirsch, who's played by Jake Weber, who also speaks German, and he's assigned to this entire operation as its leader. And to keep going with this list of names, I'm very sorry guys, I wrote all these down, but they're just all introduced all at once. Another one who's joining them is Major Matthew Coonan, who is an explosive expert in naval intelligence, if I'm correct, and he's played by David Keith. So we get like introduction after introduction, but it doesn't feel too confusing. Like most of them are quite recognizable, so that's good.
Yeah, and Hirsch and Coonan represent these characters who go on to the submarine and they don't know anything about being on a submarine. So they're kind of our stand-in as the audience. You know, they see a leak and they're like, oh, is that normal? And the submariners kind of laugh at them a little bit. And like, they're sort of learning new things about the submarine while we're learning things about being on a submarine.
I also love all of these nicknames, like Trigger, Rabbit, Tank. I feel like it's not just a nickname, it's a personality. We're really getting a snapshot of who these guys are. It's fantastic. I'm half expecting there to be like, and then this is Sneaky Pete, and then this is Little Jim, and this is Big Jim, and you know.
Yeah, so I guess we should say the other members of the crew are Seaman Ted Trigger Fitzgerald, played by Tom Gyrie, Torpedo Man Ronald Rabbit Parker, played by Will Estes, Seaman Eddie Carson, who's a cook, played by T.C. Carson, Seaman Anthony Mazzola, played by Eric Palladino, Motor Machinist Charles Tank Clemens, played by Dave Power, and Seaman Herb Griggs, played by Dirk Cheatwood. And you do not have to remember all those names because a lot of them are going to kick the bucket at certain points in the movie.
Spoiler alert.
Yeah. The character of Eddie Carson, he's the only Black character. He is symbolic of the Black submariners and sailors who were restricted from combat roles, but sometimes ended up performing combat duty nonetheless. And we talked about this a little bit when we did our Pearl Harbor episode. We talked about Dory Miller, who's in the same kind of similar kind of situation. The Navy vehemently resisted integration. At its height, only 4.8% of the force were Black. Prior to June 1942, Black men could only serve as messmen in the Navy, and they only went to sea in a limited capacity as officer stewards. And then for the next 2 years after June 1942, they could achieve general service ratings on shore, but still not at sea. Often the jobs assigned to segregated Black units also involved heavy manual labor. So even when they could kind of branch out into other jobs, they were still not getting any of the good stuff. And the Navy began to integrate some seagoing crews in May 1944, though the proportions were still capped. So it was like a certain percentage. And restrictions on shipboard jobs were not totally removed until after the war. And there were no Black naval officers during World War II. So this is our one character. And it's kind of nice that we get some representation, I suppose.
Yeah. I do like him as a character, and he's the first one we really see talking to Matthew McConaughey's character. And you get a sense that even though Matthew McConaughey's character, I keep forgetting his name. What's his name? Tyler?
Yeah.
Tyler. He's not deemed a good enough leader yet by his superior. His men all do like him very much. So you get a little snapshot from different people there.
Yeah, that is kind of cool how they do that, where they have different men coming up to him at different times saying, hey, sorry to hear you didn't get your boat. And, you know, you have an enlisted guy saying, hey, you want to have a drink with the enlisted men later? So he's definitely respected by the people under him.
And I think one of the seamen says, my mom is here, do you want to meet her at the wedding or something? It's really quite sweet. Like, they're quite familiar with him.
Yeah. On the other hand, I do find that seeing all of that stuff, you're like, why doesn't Bill Paxton want him to have his own ship? You know, like he sort of briefly explains, he's like, I don't think you can make the tough decisions. And you're like, I haven't really seen that borne out in any capacity. So it's really just like Bill Paxton's character saying a line and you're like, well, I guess I'll take his word for it.
There needs to be conflict. So we go back to the German sub and we see them kill sailors lost at sea, which is bad. The reason I even wanted to mention this is because it wasn't very common for German U-boat crews to kill people like that, because they were actually known to help sailors with like food and medical supplies and directions. But they had to stop doing that after Admiral Karl Donit issued the Laconia Order, which happened after a US air attack on U-boats transporting injured survivors under a Red Cross flag in 1942. So German U-boat crews were then under War Order number 154 not to rescue any survivors, which apparently paralleled Allied policy.
Yeah, probably doesn't necessarily mean that you would just machine gun them in their dinghy.
No, true. It seems a bit they made the commander kind of hesitate to do it at first, and also the other crew members were like, we can't just shoot him. And then he makes them do it anyway. I mean, they have to be evil, so...
True. We need some classic Nazi just following orders, you know?
Yes.
I was just going to say that.
Then we sort of follow our American crew on their way to the U-571. So they've got their own U-boat, I guess. They have their own submarine that's decked out to look like a U-boat, and they're pretending to be the resupply ship, and they're like trying to get there before the real resupply ship so they can manage to board this sub.
So this scene is very long, but not a whole lot happens. but there is one scene wherein the character of Mazzola mentions that the S-26 sank in a test dive, and the S-26 did exist, but apparently it's not this one because the real S-26 did not sink in a test dive, but it instead sank in a collision with a patrol combatant in January of 1942. So it's a different story with that name attached. I don't think it's meant to be that stuff necessarily, but
the reason why they include it is because he's holding like a raw egg in his hand and he's like, yeah, they went below a certain pressure, and then he like crushes the egg. So we all understand that if the submarine goes below X 100 meters, then the pressure will cause it to like implode in on itself, and that will become relevant later.
Yeah. This movie is a little on the nose about stuff that will happen later. Everything is set up. I would say I like things being set up, but it's kind of really obvious that it's going to become relevant later.
You're like, I wonder if they'll have to take a really deep dive.
Surely this random story doesn't mean anything for the rest of the 2 hours we have to go.
The S-33, the decked out, pretending to be U-boat, arrives at the U-571, but the weather's abysmal. Like, it's raining cats and dogs, and it's like, why would anybody do this? But they send a boarding party over, and with them is Hirsch, who's supposed to be leading and also speaks German. But as he approaches the German people on the other U-boat, he hesitates to start speaking. But then Wendt, our half-German crew member, decides to speak up first, and he saves their assets. And that's the last of his identity being hidden, and it's also not at all a conflict, which I thought was kind of sad. Like, if you're gonna do that, at least make it a little spicy. But I guess it's not.
Yeah, it's really a non-issue. And also, I just want to say, what cracks me up is they're in the middle of this like crazy storm. Like, we can see the rain is lashing their faces and whatever. But for some reason, both the U-boats are curiously extremely still in the water. I'm like, I gotta think it'd be pretty difficult to board that U-boat if there's a big ass storm in the middle of the ocean. Like, you would think it would be like moving around and there'd be big waves, but it's just like they're clearly in a tank somewhere.
It also cracks me up that the guy named Wendt is like, please don't tell anybody I'm German. They'll never know.
That's true.
It was like, Pete Wentz of Fall Out Boy's grandfather? Is that you?
That's the plot twist later, Sam.
The sequel comes out.
So they just about managed to surprise the Germans, but we lose our first man, a man named Griggs. He dies. But other than that, it's fairly easy for them to just overwhelm everybody, and they secure the U-571. But then the American version of it is torpedoed by the German resupply submarine that they were pretending to be. I was gonna say everybody dies, but no. Coonan, Emmett, and Larson are killed. So Emmett is Tyler's best friend, and also Bon Jovi. And we don't really see him get killed. I read a little bit of trivia that he was supposed to be beheaded, but then they'd have to rate it R, and they didn't want to rate it R, so they just show him not there anymore.
So wild.
I just feel like, for the confusion of people listening, so there's their submarine, which is the fake U-boat. They're trying to board the real incapacitated U-boat. Meanwhile, the resupply U-boat they were trying to beat here finally arrives, somehow sees all this happening in the dark and stormy night, perceives what is happening, and manages to torpedo the correct U-boat.
Pretty amazing, like, skills, for sure.
Dubious.
Anyway.
Yeah.
Very dubious. The commander, Dahlgren, he's just about hanging on in the water, kind of literally. He orders Tyler to dive the captured U-boat with the survivor still on it, obviously. And they do. And Dahlgren actually cries out, "Take her down!" And apparently these were the last words of Lieutenant Commander Howard W. Gilmer, who posthumously received the Medal of Honor for his self-sacrifice in saving his boat, the USS Garler. And I looked this up. I don't know anything else about it, but I thought it was cool that they put that line in there. On the other hand, it's a pretty generic line, so I don't know if it's done on purpose or not.
Yeah, I was just going to ask that, if that was on purpose, and then, like, what are the circumstances of the Growler going down? But I guess we'll never know.
It's a
Not
very
today.
piecemeal inclusion of history. And also, they had previously had this very on the nose conversation between Dahlgren and Tyler about like leadership and sacrifice, and like you have to be able to sacrifice your men for the greater good of the team. And then, of course, while Dahlgren's floating in the water, he has to be like, no, leave me. And then Tyler has to like make that leadership and sacrifice decision to let Dahlgren die so that he can rescue everybody else.
And we get to see Dahlgren literally wait to drown until the submarine is completely submerged. I'm like, oh, the timing's perfect.
He's like, I know how to swim, but only for like 5 or 6 more seconds.
Watching Matthew Settle's character go down in his stretcher is like, that was like one of the most terrifying things, because you can't help but feel like, I don't know, March, I can feel like you're almost like your claustrophobia with it. And I'm also terrified of the ocean. It's monster soup. I can't see the bottom of it. I don't know what's coming at me. I don't trust it. So to see him go down and yelling for someone to help him and he's all tied up in his stretcher is just like one of the most terrifying feelings. It was not comfortable. There was so much about this movie that I was so uncomfortable, even down to watching everybody be damp all the time. It just made my skin crawl. I am built for comfort, you guys, not utility. And so like, I'm the kind of person, if it's a little bit humid out and my sheets are maybe a little bit damp feeling because of humidity, I'm just like, I can't do this. And so to see everyone just dripping wet, I was like, oh.
Apparently the beds, like even the mattresses were always a little damp, like everything was always damp. And the amount of space that existed for you as a submariner on the boat, I think was like 1 cubic meter, which is not a lot of room. And everything else was taken up by like food, supplies, whatever. So it was like, no matter where you were, like even in the area where the bunks were, it would be crammed with supplies and stuff. And you would just be like, ugh, like trying to fit your way around this like extremely crowded little maze.
Yeah, they would actually stack up cans of food in the aisles and then cover them with planks. So when you were walking, then not only are you getting the crush from left and right, but you're getting the crush up and down too. And then they also have this system called hot racking, because not everybody can be sleeping at the same time. So they break up the crews into shifts. So you actually share your bunk with like 1 or 2 other guys who are off shift while you're on shift. And so everything's damp. It's probably smells like diesel fumes and recycled farts, and you're just crammed into these tiny little areas. It just sounds so very unappealing to me. I can't, my skin crawls just thinking about it.
Well, and you can't bathe down there either, right? So these guys are not, it smells like sweaty ballsack for sure in that sub.
Oh, yeah.
It's wet farts.
Oh, so sick.
So they do a good job of showing the supplies being stacked between the bunks in the movie. Like, that's, I'll give them that. The way they've shot it, it looks fucking claustrophobic. And I hate it.
Well, and early in the war, too, really a submarine was mostly a surface vessel. They could dive to take defensive maneuvers, but typically they'd be traveling along the surface because they could travel a lot faster that way. And it wasn't until later in the war when they developed submarines that could be underwater for like 3 days at a time without surfacing. So it's like, yeah, you are getting this like claustrophobic feeling, but it's like so often it's just like a tin can floating on the water, you know? Such like a strange manifestation.
The way I've heard it described is a sewer pipe in the bottom of the ocean. It sounds so pleasant.
Fun.
Yeah. And there's no windows. You don't have any sunlight whatsoever. You know, you can't get any fresh air. The capabilities back then, it started out as you could only be submerged for like 48 hours. And then those S boats were what did that. And then later on, like Sam, you said, it could be 3 days, I believe. But you're just running on fumes at that point because you're running on your batteries. And those batteries, I forget what they're made out of, but when they're hit with salt water, they expel chlorinated gas. Not really the thing that you want in the middle of salt water. That's not, yeah.
Understatement of the year.
Yeah.
That was what took out most of the crew of the Tang when they were hit by their own torpedo. And then as they were trying to get out through the escape hatches, the hull collapsed And as soon as that salt water hit the batteries, it was just poisonous, noxious gas all over the boat. And everyone was asphyxiated. Just not that we needed that aside. Sorry, guys. I put a lot of asides in here. I apologize.
Yeah, just it feels like health and safety were perhaps not top of mind.
No, not at all.
Well,
Decisions were made.
Yeah. Tyler dives the U-571. It's fucked up, but he still is able to dive. Like, it still has some capacity to do some things. And they actually have a mechanic in their crew, so they can make some of the fixes that the Germans were not able to do. They're underwater, and of course, they have to face off against the real resupply submarine that has torpedoed their submarine. And so they have a little underwater torpedo duel in the dark.
Which is not accurate, actually. Sub-on-sub action was really rare. And then there's actually only one instance in the war of a submerged sub successfully torpedoing another submerged sub. I guess they're borrowing from real life. They're the statistical anomaly for all of the statistics.
Yeah. I think it's hard maybe for us to imagine today, but these aren't homing torpedoes. Like, you have to aim this torpedo at the target you would like to hit, which is difficult at night in the ocean.
I also read somewhere that German resupply U-boats did not typically have torpedoes, so it's a stretch.
That's interesting. I do like this sequence, though, when they are diving, just the kind of the rapid fire, and then everybody's running around like crazy, like, this is in German, this is in German. And so Wentz and Hirsch are just running their minds off, like trying to translate all of the different gauges for everybody. I don't understand what Bill Paxton was talking about when it came to Tyler and his decision-making, because he's making 20 decisions in probably about 5 seconds amount of time. And every single one of them gets them diving and down to safety.
Yeah, it's not very consistent storytelling on their part. I was just thinking about, when they keep calling the German speakers on board over to, like, find me a thing that says hydraulic or find me whatever. I'm like, I speak pretty good French, but I wouldn't know the technical words on a submarine for anything.
After they kind of just about survive, they go to look for survivors of their own sub, the S-33, and find the cook, Eddie Carson, and Wassner pretending to be an electrician instead of the commander of the German sub. So I found this really confusing because I thought, haven't they seen this man already? Do they not recognize this guy as being the commander? But I guess maybe not.
Well, they saw him as part of the greeting party when they were boarding the U-571, but I don't think he necessarily was like, hi, I'm the captain.
Maybe not. Maybe you're right. So they take this guy in, and then they head for England. This is Tyler's plan. But to do this, they will have to cross through U-boat-infested waters of the North Atlantic. So it's not easy, and one of the crew, Mazzola, is not a particularly big fan of this plan. This is the guy who said, if you dive too far, you will just die immediately. Anyway, he's not a fan of the plan or Tyler's choices in general, and he's pretty vocal about it, and the chief actually shuts him up, like he shoves him up against the wall of the U-boat. It's like, shut up. So I like the scene. I like the chief. I do like that character quite a lot.
So they're like, this is going to be so hard for us to go across the U-boat infested waters of the North Atlantic. I'm like, yeah, but you look like a U-boat? Like, and you guys killed everyone on the resupply U-boat. So theoretically, if someone radioed you or whatever, you get one of your German guys on the line to be like, hey, we met the resupply sub. We're all good now. Our U-boat is fine. I'm like, I don't understand why that can't happen.
Yeah, that is really confusing. And they do bring up, like, well, if we encounter another U-boat, we only have one torpedo. Like, but they would be so confused why you're shooting at them, and it would just bring more trouble for you. Yeah, it is a weird part.
Just pretend to be the German submarine that you look like. You're even wearing the correct uniforms. For God's sake.
Yeah.
Just keep your head down, guys.
I did struggle at this part of the movie because I'm like, his plan is so fucking convoluted. And I'm like, am I dumb or could they just pretend to be a U-boat?
And then also, as they're pulling up to, the Allied dock or whatever, the harbor, as a U-boat, I mean, wouldn't they also run the risk of being torpedoed by the Allies? That I didn't get that.
Yeah.
I feel like at this point, I had almost forgotten that they still have the Enigma, and that's why they're then that's why they even have to make it back home. Like, wait, what are those stakes again? But it's the Enigma. And they can't be caught because then the Germans will know they have the Enigma and then they will change up the codes. So there are stakes, but I kept forgetting what they were.
It kind of
Yeah.
does take like a back seat, doesn't it? The Enigma machine.
It does. Also, I think in real life, it didn't just happen once. Like, it happened a few times that Enigma machines ended up getting captured. So,
Yeah, they are a couple of them are in the end notes, the note cards at the end.
Fun fact, because I have to plug the great city of Chicago, the greatest city in the world. The only U-boat that you can see in North America is in Chicago. It's the U-505, and it was captured, the only one captured by the Americans. Yeah, it's kind of a cool thing. You can go on it. You can see exactly how cramped this was. There's also an American S-boat, I believe, from that era in Charleston. You can go on that as well, and it definitely does smell like World War II ball sack and diesel fuels. Yeah.
I love how that scent just hangs around over the intervening decades.
I didn't understand it. I was taking a tour on this thing, and I got so lightheaded, and I felt so sick the entire time. Like, you'd think by now it would have aired out, but nope. No, they were going for authenticity, I think.
Yeah, they didn't want to get one of those, like, those little cardboard things you hang from the rearview mirror in your car that smells like a pine tree or something.
Just like all over.
Yeah.
I would like to say no thank you to all of this.
Fair enough. Fair. Yeah.
They see a German destroyer on the horizon, which, like, sidebar, that whatever boat is there is not a German destroyer. But, like, for suspension of disbelief, we'll pretend it is a German destroyer. And so obviously they have to dive because even though they look fully like a U-boat, they just are like, we can't be seen. So they're diving down, but Vossner manages to sabotage them, and he knocks out Tank, who's supposed to be watching him. He shoots Mazzola, but then Carson, the cook, stops him from escaping. And so, like, I don't know why Vossner is being, like, kept alive at this point, because he's being a huge pain in the ass and fucking everything up. But anyways, so they're not able to dive yet, so they devise this plan where they're going to try and let the German destroyer get close, and then they're going to destroy the radio communications on the destroyer, which they have to do because they don't want the German destroyer to radio back to land and tell everyone that there are Americans on this U-boat, because then everyone will know that they have an Enigma machine, and then they will dive. It's a whole thing.
And apparently the destroyer is alone. Yeah.
Sure.
I love that sound. Just apparently it's alone. And also, I think they can't dive yet because they haven't managed to fix the U-boat enough yet for them to dive, so they have to stall for time.
Yes, that's what it is.
It's just really confusing. So they do manage to take out the comms for some reason. No one knows why. And then they do dive. And
you have to explain how they take out the radio comms. The people need to know.
Do I remember? Do they use what do they do? They use the machine? No, they don't. What do they do?
They shoot it with, like, this big gun, and they manage to, like, pigeonhole this fucking shell into, like, the exact place where they need it to go.
Oh, right. It's the anti-aircraft gun that they use.
And all the while, they have this crew from the German destroyer in a little dinghy kind of trying to rope up next to the U-571, and they're trying to speak German to who they think are other fellow Germans. And the guys are like, yeah, whatever. Yeah, pay no attention to us getting this big ass gun ready to shoot. Yeah, no, don't worry. Like, it feels so cartoonish. It feels like literal Looney Tunes. Like somebody's going to go sneaking by dressed as a bush at some point.
It's like there wasn't even an attempt made to, like, let's get the German-speaking dudes up here and, like, try and trick this crew in the dinghy into going away. Let's, like, not even make that attempt.
I think actually one of them was Wentz, and he's just like, yeah, gleich. And he just keeps moving. Like, yeah. And he doesn't even try to, like, start just talking to distract them. Let's just sneak by with our, Acme gun over here.
Oh, yeah. And this is part of a longer con, because once they knock out this ship's radio situation, they're gonna dive and then come back up far away from the ship and then use their single remaining torpedo, and they're not gonna fuck this up. They're gonna torpedo the ship from far away, and then everyone will die and their secret will be safe.
And it's really tense because they do dive and they go right underneath the destroyer. And it's super tense. You're like, are they gonna hit it? Are they gonna hit it? But they don't, obviously. And then the destroyer fires a whole bunch of splashers, which is a nickname for the depth charges, to try and destroy them. And they have to come up with yet another plan to try to get away and toward Allied airspace to try and get safe that way. So this whole scene takes a long fucking time, and they use so many depth charges. I don't think they would have had that many, because I read somewhere that it's like 80 if you count them, and they didn't have 80 on the destroyer. It's another one of those, how can we make this even more unbelievable? This is how.
The thing is about depth charges too. So depth charges are an anti-submarine weapon. It's basically an explosive. It looks a little bit like a barrel. You can roll it off a ship, and if you're right over top of a submarine and it falls through the water, it causes an explosion. And they were developed originally during World War I. They improved on them during World War II. They created these ahead throwing weapons. If I'm in a boat, I can throw like a spray of them in front of me instead of just like rolling them off the edge of the boat. But they fell out of use after World War II because they invented homing torpedoes, which were much more accurate because depth charges had a 5% success rate. So they definitely would not be scoring hit after hit on a submarine, especially because for like a ship, they would have to use like sonar to find where the submarines are. But like effectively underneath you is like a blind spot. So you're dropping depth charges, but like you don't know if you're hitting anything.
So that's why they need 80, clearly, because they just never get you. Anyway, they also try to do something else, which is eject debris and also Mazzola's body to try and trick the destroyer into thinking that they are in fact destroyed. But this doesn't work yet because it takes time for the debris and Mazzola's body to surface. So there's this whole thing where the crew's kind of like, wait, we're gonna eject Mazzola's body after he tried to maybe save us a little bit toward the end, finally, after being a dick the whole time. But they do end up doing it. I don't think they executed this well in the movie. It just took too long to have effect. Like, either have it work immediately or just don't.
Yeah, I was confused that they brought it up and then a bunch of other stuff happened and then they actually did it.
Yeah.
Then it still felt like it took a long time for the Germans to see it as well.
Mm-hmm.
And I had totally forgotten that Mazzola had that whole scene where they're basically establishing him as the boat hothead. Like when that reconnaissance plane finds them and he's trying to goad on, I think it's Trigger. Like literally this guy's name is Trigger and he's on the machine gun and he's trying to goad him into shooting down this reconnaissance plane. And it's all just, I think, to establish like, oh, this guy's got a temper issue.
And he doesn't trust Tyler because he directly disobeys an order right in front of him.
Yeah, and then they kill him off, so no longer a source of conflict.
Tied that one up, yeah.
They've dived down about as far as they would reasonably want to dive in this submarine. And then Tyler's like, we're going to dive even lower. We're going to dive down to, they're at like 160 meters, which is like the max. And he's like, we're going to dive to 180 meters. And then a few minutes later, he's like, we're going to dive down to 200 meters. And basically up until like this like 2-minute span where the pressure of the water actually starts to affect the U-boat, mostly the proof that we can see that they're getting deeper underwater and more stressed out is the fact that everyone is very sweaty. So they dive down super low. The water pressure eventually damages the ship and they start to ascend, but the ballast tanks have been damaged. So they basically can't slow their ascent and they are going to surface whether they like it or not, which was not part of the plan. And they are like, okay, well, we got to have our torpedo ready when we surface because we're going to have to shoot this destroyer. It's now or never. But of course, their torpedo is fucked up because it wouldn't be an action movie if that weren't the case. And so Trigger has to go into this submerged pipe to fix I think it's a hydraulic leak, which is also, I would say, like probably the most claustrophobic scene of the movie.
Yep.
I looked this up. There was considerable variability in the max dives of different classes of submarines. Probably the deepest diving submarine of World War II was the Type 7 U-boat. It had a test depth of 270 meters or 890 feet. The test depth was not necessarily a maximum depth. Dives of up to 300 meters were sometimes recorded during the war without crushing. Usually these were not intentional dives, like it would be as a result of submarine having to go super low to take evasive maneuvers, not because they wanted to go that low necessarily, but it would have been super inadvisable because sometimes submarines, even at less than their test depth, would have an adverse reaction to pressure. You're always in a situation where the water pressure could potentially get you.
And I think the American submarines, at least the early S-boats, only had the capability to do half of what a U-boat could do. So when the guys are freaking out that Tyler's pushing them further and further, it's because in their minds, they think that this is a sure way to die. And then I love how the chief kind of murmurs to himself, like, those Germans can really make a boat.
That's true.
And then before you know it, you need more conflict because they suddenly realize they hear something over the sonar or on the radio, and it's not one of their messages. So they're like, who's sending this message? And it turns out that Wasner has escaped yet again, and he's trying to signal the Germans. Why the fuck is he still alive?
Maybe I misunderstood this. I thought he was like tapping a Morse code message. They were all trying to be really quiet, and then they could hear this like Morse code message, and it was him.
Yeah. And I love this part because the two guys who pick up on it are the two German speakers.
Yeah.
As far as action movies go, like I'll get sucked into an action movie like a moth to a flame. This is my favorite part of the whole movie because if you watch Hirsch, he realizes what's going on before everybody else does and before the audience does. And he just takes off running out of nowhere. And then the next time you see him, he's got just like rage in his eyes and he bludgeons Vossner in the face with a wrench, I think it is. And then he comes back with like blood streaked down his cheek. And everybody's looking at him like, sweetie, you got a little something. And he's like, blood. He goes from totally freezing in the beginning to like just this, rabid killer, like totally over Vossner's bullshit at that point. So I think everybody else is. Like you said, why is he still alive? This movie is a cautionary tale on what to do with your POWs.
Grim.
Sorry.
I liked this part too because they're trying to be so fucking quiet in this submarine because the boat on the surface can hear them if you even like speak too loudly with the sonar, which I think is just like that adds so much tension to it. Like they're sort of like speaking very quietly to one another and trying not to make any noise.
And I guess this was also a thing that boats would do to each other or like do to submarines is just whenever you ping this sonar, you could hear it reverberate through the submarine. So even if it was just a normal day and a boat was trying to harass you, it would ping the sonar and just keep you awake. It would annoy the hell out of you to the point where you would just kind of snap too.
Interesting.
That's mean.
Reminds me of Washing Machine Charlie. The Japanese would fly a plane over every night in Guadalcanal and just drop bombs in the jungle to just harass the Marines in their foxholes.
Yeah.
Well, unfortunately, our young submariner Trigger drowns, but not before he saves the day. He fixes the leak so they can fire their torpedo, and they're able to successfully blow up the destroyer. I guess it's kind of a happy ending. The remaining crew abandons the ship. They still have the Enigma, so they're going to be able to bring it back and help the Allies crack the Enigma code. And they are spotted by a U.S. Navy plane, so they know that they're hopefully going to shortly be rescued.
Hooray, but no, Trigger, don't die. We liked you.
So sad, especially when you see him reaching and poor Trigger.
I will be honest that I did find him interchangeable with the other young blonde guy up until this moment.
I wanted to make the joke like, oh, Trigger, we hardly knew you. They're like, we need a small guy to go down and plug this leak. And so everybody looks at the two small guys who happen to be sitting next to each other. And they're like, why is everyone looking at us? Yeah. I wonder if that's the other interchangeable blonde small fellow who also probably has an interesting nickname.
Yeah, I just feel like I'm 5'11" and I feel like I would hate being on a submarine, but in that moment, I would love being 5'11" and too big to go in that pipe.
I didn't put this in the notes, but it's Tyler who has to make the hard decision to send him in there. And then he's like, I can't do it because he comes back out unsuccessful at some point. And then Tyler has to speak to him and like encourage him to go back in there and fix it. And you're like, oh God, no, he's going to die, isn't he? You just know.
I like who he's like, I know you think you can't fix it, but I need you to defy the laws of physics, perhaps like snap some of your bones and get in there.
I looked up the plane that spots them because it looked funny to me, and apparently it's a PBY Catalina, which is a flying boat. I thought this was really neat. I'd never seen one before, but cool.
What would it have been doing there? Do we know? Like, does it lot? Does that mean that they were close to Greenland?
I feel like they make it a point too. Like, I think Matthew McConaughey's character or something says something like, oh, it's a long range something or other. Like, we're meant to understand that, like, they know that typically you wouldn't get like a single or double engine plane like out that far.
Gotcha.
Thankfully, there hasn't been another submarine waiting to kill them in your dinghy.
In the U-boat infested waters that we were warned about.
Yes.
Exactly. So we had an opening card. We also get an end card. It says, well, it's quite long. There's a couple. It says, this film is dedicated to the bravery of Allied sailors and officers who risked their lives capturing Enigma materials from U-boats during the Battle of the Atlantic. And then we get a couple of examples. The first one is May 9, 1941. Enigma machine encoding documents captured from the U-110 by HMS Bulldog and HMS Obratia of the 3rd Escort Group. So that's the first one we get, which is actually not an American crew, but a British crew. And the second one we get is October 30th, 1942. Short weather cipher captured from the U-559 by the HMS Petard. And the last one we get is June 4th, 1944, Enigma machine encoding documents captured from the U-505 by US Navy Task Force 22.3. So, that's it. That's the end of the movie. It just ends, like you said in the beginning, Katie.
Just stops.
I have some notes on this. So, the film, Sam has already mentioned it, but it's very, 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 very loosely based on the story of the U-110, which we just mentioned in the end cards. But it's a British crew, not the Americans, that captured the first Enigma cards on sea. And that's perhaps the reason that the British didn't really like this film. And this actually made it all the way into the House of Commons, where Labour MP Brian Jenkins stated that the film was, quote-unquote, an affront to the memories of British sailors who lost their lives on this action. And Prime Minister Tony Blair at the time agreed. And when we say very loosely based, it's because the 110 crew had actually left the U-boat and they thought it was going to sink, but it didn't. And that's when the crew of the HMS Bulldog was able to board it and grab the Enigma and the code. So it's not quite as exciting as we get in this movie.
No, that would have been like a 15-minute movie. They would have been like, oh, the U-boat is empty. Let's get on there and grab the Enigma.
I do, like I said, I hate to say the ugly American thing, but they don't really make any claims, though, to be based on anything. So I don't want to make any British friends of the pod mad, but I don't get it. Sorry, I had to say it. I just don't understand the frustration.
Apparently they did in the marketing quite a bit.
Oh, okay. I was also wondering too if maybe I was watching it on Netflix. And so I was wondering if it was something that Netflix removed, was like an inspired by title at the beginning. So I tried to find like a DVD of it and was unsuccessful. But so that makes sense.
I think I remember reading too that, I don't remember if it was the director, I think maybe it was, but he had actually spoken with some of the actual crew members. And then when the movie was about to come out, one of the guys that he'd been talking to was like, would it be cool if you mentioned the actual guys who did the stuff? And he was like, yeah, okay. So the end cards were actually sort of added as like an afterthought, which I almost wonder if it would be easier to attribute this movie entirely to fiction if they just hadn't added those end cards.
I think that would have been a better idea, for sure. In 2009, this film was first on the list of the most historically inaccurate movies in the Times, so it's not very accurate. And David Ayer was later quoted to regret making the movie like this and changing the British crew to an American crew.
And yet he still later subjected us all to fury.
Yep. I thought that was funny too, that he actually said, like, I wouldn't have done it this way today. And then Fury is super weird and inaccurate.
Yeah, it's funny because it's like, I don't know, the vibes of this are almost like, you know how in Fury, what's historically accurate is like the super technical stuff a lot of the time. It's like, oh, this specific control board is 100% historically accurate, or like this piece of the tank is 100% historically accurate, or whatever. But then it's like the actual everything happening around it has like nothing to do with actually what happened in history.
Yeah, that's definitely U-571. And I think I read somewhere too that the people who made the film toured the U-505 and took a crap load of notes. And so, yeah, all of that technical stuff, when they call out different instrumentation and different procedures, that's all 100% correct. So I feel like Ayer has a style then, going from this to Fury.
Yeah, but there wasn't like a 20-minute long super sus sexual assault scene in this movie, so I did appreciate that.
I knew there's a reason I haven't seen Fury.
Yeah, you can give it a miss.
I went through a really like anti-Brad Pitt stage. I can't pinpoint why. Like, don't ask me. I just kind of was like, oh, he's in it, I can pass right now. And then I just never revisited it. So I'm glad you gave me that trigger warning, though.
Yeah.
I rated it a 1 out of 10, whatever we were rating it out of.
And it kind of sucks because like it has John Bernthal in it. It has Shia LaBeouf, who like sucks as a human being, but is like a pretty good actor. It has like, you know, it has like the makings of potentially being a good movie, and then it is simply not a good movie.
Speaking of ratings, we need to rate this movie, guys. I'm gonna go to our guest first. Katie, what do you rate it?
It's definitely a solid action movie, but that's about it. It's not solid in any sort of history whatsoever. So I'm going to split the difference and say I give it a 5.
So that's 5 improbable escape scenarios out of 10?
Yes.
I mean, I'd say there are about 5 in there, so that's not
I was
bad.
going to say, like, that's still probably less than what was in the movie. But
How about you, Sam?
Gosh, well, it was fun to see Matt Settle. It was fun to see Bon Jovi, even though I did not recognize him. It was fun to see Matthew McConaughey doing his usual Matthew McConaughey thing. And it was fun to see Bill Paxton, RIP. But it's simply not that great of a movie. It was nice to see a submarine movie. Like, I feel like there's not a ton of them. So that was kind of cool and gave me an opportunity to look into that. But yeah, I'll give this movie, I think I'll agree. I'll give it 5 improbable escape scenarios out of 10. It's like, if you want to like throw something on and maybe not pay that much attention to it, it's not the worst or anything. But I don't think that you need to run out and watch it. I don't think it's a crucial part of the World War II canon.
I'm gonna rate it, like, as a movie, it's not bad. I'm gonna give it maybe 4.5 improbable escape scenarios out of 10, only because I had a terrible time being claustrophobic and afraid of the sea. It's a decent thriller. It's pretty tense in some places, which I enjoyed. I don't remember any of the music. I do remember some of the music, actually, now that I think about it. At the opening of it, I thought it was quite triumphant. Like, wait, we're celebrating World War II again.
It's almost like, it almost gave me like Indiana Jones vibes in places.
Yeah, but yeah, I don't think I would watch it again for all the reasons I've already named. So, not a waste of time, but also not a great movie.
I'll definitely put it on if I'm like folding laundry or something. But there are other movies that I can watch to fill a couple of hours of my life.
Yeah. Katie, are you reading anything?
I am. So I'm doing 2 different books, kind of in fits and starts. I'm alternating between the 2. One is called D-Day Through French Eyes, and it's this incredibly well-researched collection of interviews and diary entries and things like that of the French who were living in Normandy and their experiences of the day before the landing and then after. That and another collection of memoirs called And If I Shall Perish, which is about combat nurses in World War II. Alternating between the 2 because it's pretty heavy on both sides and sometimes you need a break.
Sounds about right.
Are you rating anything, Sam?
Yeah, I am reading The Nazi and the Psychiatrist, Hermann Goering, Dr. Douglas M. Kelly, and A Fatal Meeting of the Minds at the End of World War II by Jack L. High. And it's interesting because I am also reading a book that I talked about last week about the Battle of Britain. So I'm getting like Hermann Goering, 1940. The RAF are going to be wiped out in a few days. We're going to have air superiority, no problem. And then I'm also get Hermann Goering at like Nuremberg, where he's just like, I'm still the head Nazi in charge, damn it. So it's a super neat read so far. I mean, just like a really interesting topic, I guess. And they're making a movie that's coming out in November where I think is it Russell Crowe who plays Goering? Anyway, it should be good. Yeah.
It's got Russell Crowe, it's got our friend Rami Malek. I say our friend, he's not our friend, we've never met him. And it's got a Dutch actress in it, which I think is neat. So hopefully we'll get to cover it on the show and maybe get some of the actors on. I'm just putting that out there into the universe right now.
Manifest it. Are you reading anything?
Yeah, I am not, to no one's surprise.
Are you watching anything?
I have watched a lot of things recently. What am I watching? The last thing I watched was Foundation, which is a sci-fi show about, I can't even tell you what it's about. It's too confusing. But it's good. And it's one of those that you can kind of get lost in, and the world building is really neat. So I enjoy those.
Nice. Yeah, I feel like you watch a lot of sci-fi stuff, or like, I feel like you've mentioned some sci-fi stuff before.
I love sci-fi if it's good, and if I don't have to look at space too much, because I'm also afraid of space.
Have you seen Altered Carbon?
Yes, I loved Altered Carbon. It's good.
Yeah, I liked that one too, yeah.
Anyway, I think we're kind of to the point where we can round up this episode. Katie, thank you so much for being on with us again and being our nerd about submarines.
Thanks for having me. It was a pleasure.
And everybody else, thank you so much for listening. You can find us wherever you get your podcasts. You can rate us on a bunch of platforms. You can send this episode to a friend who likes submarines. You can follow us on Instagram at Rosie the Reviewer Podcast. You can visit our website, rosieTheReviewer.com, for more information. And we'll see you next week.
Bye.